Leader Exchange, we're here with Isaiah Stanback. And I'm going to have to read this because he's an NFL analyst, 2023 Lone Star Regional Sports Emmy, color commentator. He's a keynote speaker. He's a Super Bowl champion. He's an entrepreneur and owner of Steadfast Fitness. So all of that's a mouthful, Isaiah, but you've done a lot of stuff in your life. And man, we're privileged to have you over here in Fort Worth.
I appreciate y'all having me, man.
Coming all the way from Dallas this morning. So thanks for coming.
Yeah, helicopter would have been a little bit better,
yeah,
you know what I'm saying? But no, it was good.
You're working on that.
No, it was good, man. I'm definitely blessed to be able to be here. I've had, as you mentioned, I've had some pretty good life experiences.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for them all.
Yeah, well, thank you. Tell us a little bit about your background, kind of where you're from and all that. I'd love to know some things like that.
Man. Okay, so born and raised right in the Central District of Seattle, which is literally pretty much just outside downtown.
Yeah.
I grew up in what I consider to be the hood.
Yeah.
So my dad separated early on, and I spent most of my time with my mom, single mom of 3.
Wow.
Went to my dad's every other weekend, did that whole deal.
Yeah.
And just a bad neighborhood. Had to make a lot of smart decisions.
Yeah.
Based upon things that I did not want to be.
Sure.
Had a lot of examples of those. Didn't have a lot of examples of things that you should be or want to be, but a lot of things a lot of pictures of what you should not want to be.
Knew what you wanted to push away from.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that was pretty much my childhood there. I played a lot of sports. Obviously, that kind of kept me off the streets, kept me out of trouble. Gangs, drugs, all the things, alcoholism, that was all surrounded around me. It really kept me fine-tuned as to what it is that I wanted to attain.
Sure.
And I wanted to be a pro athlete early on. That's something that I identified. And then, my mom had me in the church. My dad had me in the church.
Yeah.
My dad was actually a singles minister growing up. So I went to his house. It was straight and narrow.
Yeah.
We were watching Kobe, the old school cartoon. It wasn't even a cartoon, the TV show Kobe.
Yeah.
And, my mom was a little bit more on the hood side, but, she still better have your butt in church every week. So I had that structure growing up. And then, just sports, baseball, basketball, football, track.
Yeah.
Primarily kept me off the streets.
Well, that kept you, and then played for University of Washington. And as we said before, man, you're celebrating this year for sure.
Yeah, them boys are taking care of business this year.
It's been a little bit.
It's been a while. They like to hate on us up there in the Northwest a little bit, but it was definitely it was a great experience. I battled through the rough times at the University of Washington. Yeah. I had 3 head coaches in 4 years.
Wow.
As a quarterback, it's not what you want, but I battled a lot of adversity there, overcame a lot, learned a lot about myself.
Right.
And then, from there, I had an opportunity to go play a little bit of pro ball.
Yeah. You were in the league for 6 years.
Did.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, we'll talk about that in just a minute. So you've had a lot of success. I mean, in a lot of different areas. But the NFL, you had some setbacks there, some pretty significant setbacks there, always just inches away from a big contract. But tell me how God used that in your life.
Yeah, well, man, it really started off back when I first sought a relationship with Christ for myself. I was back in college. Obviously being brought up in the church, and both sides of my family really being engaged in the church and active. I had to find it for myself. It's one thing to be brought up in it; it's another thing to seek it out for yourself. And when I did that, that was actually my freshman year of college.
Okay,
and
moving away from home and all that.
Moving away from home, a lot of stuff going on around you. Got your own spot, freedom, everything that comes with the college life.
Kind of scary in some ways.
It can be scary. It absolutely can be scary, but I had to make a choice early on, because even though I went through my entire life being able to avoid a lot of the pitfalls, those things were even more prevalent when I didn't really have nobody to answer to. I went back to the crib by myself. Yeah. So I really sought him for myself during that freshman year. And I brought a friend along with me. My friend kind of fell off the bandwagon and it really kind of put me in a situation where I had to make a determination. What am I doing this for? And what's my overarching purpose here? Is it truly a relationship? Am I truly trying to follow, or is it something that just sounds good, amongst the masses? And, from that point forward, I really committed, and honestly, right after that, life got really hard.
Yeah. Some people think, once you give a life over, that it gets easier. It sometimes gets a lot harder.
No, the heat gets turned up on you for sure.
I know. So, when you went from football, kind of being in the center, we talk about the core leadership model here, being everything, and Christ took charge of that. Tell us about that kind of crossover. You said that happened in freshman year, but then you still have to kind of navigate that when the injuries happen and all that.
Yeah. So for me, it really came, my initial battle really came on as I was battling racism in college.
Okay.
I was only the second black quarterback in my college's history.
Wow.
So I was behind Warren Moon.
Yeah.
So Warren Moon was the first, I was the second.
Okay, I didn't know that.
So there was a lot that came with that at that time.
Yeah.
That's back when quarterbacks were just, African-American quarterbacks were kind of just starting to be accepted.
Yeah.
So I battled a lot of the things that came with that, with that role and that responsibility. And that was really the hardship that I had in college.
Okay.
That was the hardest thing for me to overcome, to deal with, not looking like my peers, not being given the same opportunity as my peers, and having to push through that while still keeping a professional persona on the outside, you know? So dealing with all those demons, dealing with all that, that hurt, that pain, but still trying to remain professional at the age of 19 and 20, that's relatively difficult, you know?
Exactly.
That was really my first test. And then my second test came my senior season when everything was on the up and up. I was, probably about to be MVP of the Pac-10, and, looks like I was going to have high draft stock. And then I blew my foot out in the seventh game of my senior season.
Okay.
And the doctor told me it was going to take 9 to 12 months to recover.
Wow.
And that obviously was a gut check for me. Everything that I had worked for.
I didn't realize it happened in college. You had some in pro ball as well.
Yeah, I had a lot that followed that as well, but that was a major one. And I think that was the first test of my faith physically, in terms of dealing with that type of adversity. And obviously I was able to come back from that, and then it seemed like it was year after year after that. I kept facing very similar issues. I tore my shoulder. As soon as I got back healthy from my foot, I got drafted by the Cowboys, got into the league. And then as soon as I got healthy, I blew my shoulder out. Yeah. And I had to play with that. And then I got that taken care of. And then I blew my shoulder out again. Wow. Got that taken care of. Then I tore my knee. And then I had
it moved around your body. It
just moved around. No, it wasn't one thing. I just kept getting, knocked down. Yeah. And, you learn a lot about yourself. You learn a lot about your faith when you're really at the bottom. When everybody for me at the time, that was the bottom. For others, everybody's situation is different. But in terms of, even though I was in a blessed, great opportunity, a blessed situation, I was still having to deal with those mental hurdles. And I would not have been able to push through any of that had I had not a relationship with God.
Yeah. And so you get out of the league, and then you started Steadfast Fitness.
Yep.
Based on 1 Corinthians 15,
Correct.
58. Be steadfast. Always give yourself fully to the work of the Lord.
Absolutely.
I love that, man. Tell me a little bit about that transition and kind of how you used your business for ministry.
For sure. No, I kind of got catapulted into that after my last injury. So my seventh surgery that I had was an Achilles tear. Okay. And I did that. That was actually my contract year when I went back home in Seattle to actually go play for the Seattle Seahawks and go get the big contract. Yeah. I was about to be named captain, and I tore my Achilles. Oh, man. And I was furious. Yeah. I was beyond furious. And I was sitting there and trying to understand why,
wrestling with God.
Wrestling with God. Yeah, we had a little arm wrestling competition, and I think he won. He won that one, for sure.
I'm pretty sure who had to put my money on.
But I understood that the fight wasn't over for me at that time in terms of my career, but I understood that was no longer what I have sought my entire life. That was not his plan for me. And that was really the pivot moment that I had. And from that point forward, I went back and started trying to go back to school. I went and got my executive MBA. And I'm not a person who loves school by any means, but I knew that was necessary for me to kind of launch into this next transition in my life. But I ended up playing another couple years in the league, won a Super Bowl, and then I started trying to figure out what was that next step. And that next step for me was trying to utilize the experiences that God had given me, right? The quote unquote pitfalls, the hurt, the pain, and how can I now turn that into ministry for Him, right? By using those experiences to help other people, and not even just from the physical standpoint, right? Not just being an athlete, just helping athletes, but helping people overcome themselves, and making sure that they understood that this is not just about you, that that if you have a relationship with God, that you can walk through anything, and that was the light bulb that came on after my last injury. And that's kind of what I transitioned into, and that's how I started Steadfast.
Well, everybody goes through some heartache in their life.
Facts.
I mean, it can be relational, it can be physical, it can be, in their career, a lot of different, everybody's going to hit the wall at some point in their life. And that's when you've been through it, you can help walk people through it. So that's great. So if you had to do it all over again, anything, I know the injuries and all that, you'd like to erase some of those, but anything you would change? Anything you'd say, if I could erase it? When we talk about young leadership, just they're saying, hey, I don't want to make the same mistakes. So if I can learn.
You know what? There's a lot of things that I would like to have seen, how it would have went. Baseball for me was my #1 passion.
Oh, was it
and
really?
I was way better at baseball than I was at football. I turned down pro baseball out of high school.
You guys make me sick, man. You guys have so much talent. It's amazing.
So that was hard. That was one of the hardest decisions I had to make, was not going pro in baseball and dedicating and putting all my eggs in the basket of football pretty much. I would have liked to have seen where that gone, but had I went that route, I know that I would not have had all these same experiences, and I would not be the man that I am today. I wouldn't have the faith that I have today. I wouldn't be the leader and father and husband that I am. So I'm grateful for those experiences. I'm grateful for the hurt that I experienced, because it made me better.
And you know, that's when you have to trust in the sovereignty of God, and just say, hey, you know, this is the road He had for me.
Let go, let God, man.
That's great. So how's your faith, you know, we've already kind of talked about this, but how's it impacted your life, not only with the football and the career, but being a father? We talk about that, you know, being a husband, being a father, all that with your growing up, you had to make some choices there as well. So
I think perspective. I would say perspective has had the greatest impact. Knowing the things that I've overcome with my walk with Christ, knowing the opportunities that He continues to present me when I'm nowhere near worthy, knowing the battles and the experiences that I've had, like I'm able to pour all that back into my kids, you know, and whether they listen or not, that's a whole other thing. I know. But knowing the path that they're on, and just having a perspective to see the journey that I had and see where they're going and help them and try to avoid the pitfalls.
It's
right?
hard, isn't it?
That's it, man. It's like playing Frogger. You know, it's like playing. It's like
we'll have to translate that for the younger generation. They don't know Frogger.
They don't know about that. But no, it's like to have that perspective, to have that understanding, and then be able to pour that into them, and then show them what a relationship with Christ looks like. You know. Everybody, there's not one way to go about it. No, you know, there's really not one way to go about it. You know, for me, you know, obviously have the kids in the church, and if we can't be in church, you know, physically because of the football season, and we're watching it online. But it's funny how, you know, we're driving to go have dinner, you know, and we're, you know, listening to gospel music, and I'm, you know, on one of my songs, and I'm singing my heart, and I look in the rearview mirror, and I see my kids just staring at me. And it's like little things like that, where it's like, you know, through you, you know, the impact that you have is enormous, you know, and it's not for show, it's not for necessarily asserted effort all the times, but it's just like, in regards to my family, like they're always watching. Yeah.
Well, I just want to tell you something on camera here. We got a recommendation, you coming and speaking for us from Jennifer Nickerson, and so we're standing in your lobby waiting to speak to you, and we get a text from another guy that's going to introduce you today, Rob Jones, and Rob texted us, said, hey, have you ever talked about having Isaiah Stanback? And we texted him back, hey, we're in the lobby waiting to talk to him. That's hilarious. So people are noticing, man, and you're a light in the community and in the DFW area, and I'm sure outside the DFW area as well. So, man, we're grateful to have you.
I'm excited.
And look forward to the lunch today. If you haven't joined us for one of the Leader Exchange lunches, we'd love to have you. We'll be with Isaiah Stanback today. November 9th, we'll be back December 12th with Hal J. Thanks so much. God bless.